All right, here we go. Let's take a look at economic systems today. These slides are on Canvas, by the way. If you are interested in downloading those for yourselves, you're welcome to do that. The recording will also be published in the next day or two on our Canvas page. So you're welcome to come back and re-listen to that. That does not mean that this is a free pass to sleep through this time so that you're going to come back and listen to it later. That's not how that works. Yes, ma'am?
Chapter 2.
This is chapter 2, yeah. So economic systems here, we're going to begin by talking about certain types of economies. And the video that you watched did describe several of those different types of economies, many of which you've probably studied in history at some point in the past. So we begin here with traditional economy. And when we look at the different economic systems and the way that we are going to incorporate them into our government, into our society, traditional economy is very rare. Not a whole lot of people are going to have this. But they're going to answer all of the economic questions by their own traditions, customs, or their current members of their society. I have on here this graphic about the Inuit people, and they would be considered a traditional economy. They would not fit into some of these other ones we talk about. So when we come to the economic questions that we will see later on in this chapter, those economic questions are always answered by their traditions or their customs or the current members of their society. And so it varies based on the particular culture that we happen to be addressing. If it's the Inuit or if it is an African tribe of people that they work based off of traditional economy. So this one we kind of set off to the side. We don't go a whole lot into that simply because those rules are really undefined. But a command economy, this one is a little bit more prevalent and is a little more vivid in our minds. What are some examples of command economies that you have studied in history or that would come to your minds here right at the beginning? Where? Vietnam, command economy. Where else might we have seen a command economy? Cuba, they mentioned that in the video, yep. Russia comes to my mind. Is that what you're going to say?
I was going to say Soviet Union.
Soviet Union, okay. Yeah, probably more accurate to say Soviet Union than Russia. So definitely some examples that we could look back on history as a command economy. North Korea today would be a command economy as well. So who is going to answer all of their economic questions in a command economy? It's going to be the government, yeah. So anytime that there is one of these questions, what goods are we going to produce? How much are we going to produce? Who's going to produce them? The government are making all those decisions. It's not you as the business owner. It's not you as the citizen or as the consumer. The government decides all of that in a command economy. A market economy works much differently. So if a command economy, all those questions are answered by the government, who do you think is going to answer all the questions here in a market economy? Right? It's going to be the business owners, or let's make it even more general, let's just say the people. Because it could also be consumers. So the people are going to answer all those questions. What goods are going to be produced? How much are we going to produce? What are the prices of those goods going to cost? It's going to be answered by the people, not the government. And so this only works based off of the idea that everybody will be motivated by their own self-interest. You say, well, hey, Mr. Jones, that's pretty selfish. Yeah, I know. Well, we're all kind of greedy at heart. Now, I didn't say that's right. I didn't say that's the way we ought to be. But everybody is motivated by their own self-interest. And especially when we're looking at the economy, that if you are making decisions that is going to put you in a better spot economically, and you know that if I invest in company A, I'm going to get money back or I'm going to make wealth, then that's a no-brainer. If it's a guaranteed investment, now there is no such thing as a guaranteed investment, let me just throw that out there, then I'm going to make a decision that's going to benefit me, okay? Let's just take my favorite example of donuts. You know, I'm going to walk into the donut shop and I see a donut on the shelf. If that is going to provide me a certain level of satisfaction, then I'm going to make a decision to buy that donut because it is in my own self-interest. I'm not buying that donut for your self-interest. I don't really care whether you have a donut this morning or not. If I had one and I enjoyed it, then I am being selfish. And I am fulfilling my own self-interest in all of that. Now, hopefully I actually do care about you, and maybe at some point we will have to have donuts in this class. I think that's probably only fair. I don't know when, I don't know how that's going to happen, but that probably needs to happen as much as I talk about it. So people are driven by their own self-interest, but also by incentives. So there are certain incentives in a market economy that will drive people to make choices. Those incentives can be in all kinds of fashions. It can be the incentive of a wonderfully crafted, beautifully made donut that will satisfy my taste buds that is beyond description. Or it could be an incentive in the form of cold hard cash. And for some of you, that might be your biggest incentive. If somebody offered you a certain amount of money to go out and do a task, you'd say, yeah, I'd go do that in a heartbeat. Sometimes your incentive could be something as simple as a gracious thank you. You say, oh, Mr. Jones, you just offered me cash. Now you're offering me a thank you? No way. Excuse me. But sometimes we do things for different reasons, different motivations, because there's an incentive involved. So they help us make those choices that even those incentives are going to benefit our own self-interest in all of that. Then we get to the mixed economy. And as they explain in the video, the mixed economy can be a mixture of command and market, maybe even some traditional in there. So it's really hard to come up with a solid definition of a mixed economy other than the fact that it has certain elements of other types of economies mixed in there. But I can give you a few examples that we've seen in history. Authoritarian socialism is an example, or capitalism is an example of a mixed economy. Many people would say that America is a capitalist economy, having some mixture of both a market economy and a little bit of command with the government involved in there. And then there's democratic socialism. What's that?
I would say we're more democratic.
We probably are a little bit more like that now. Yeah. And that's where generally there's a little bit more argument between these two, depending upon your view of the government involvement. But I would probably lean toward we are a little bit more democratic socialist than we are capitalism in today's world. And a lot of that has to do with how much government involvement there is. And that's where some of the debate comes into our national budget as far as where our priorities are. Where are we going to put our money? And how much government involvement is going to be there when we are spending all that money. So that comes here to our national economic goals. And I want to be very clear on this, that we are primarily dealing with the United States economic goals here. So while these goals may uphold here in the United States, they may not necessarily be true for every country around the world. So we're going to focus on, this is the United States approach. I've got 6 goals here. I'm going to put them all up at the same time, so that way you can copy them in and I can talk about them all without having to worry about throwing them up on the screen. So when we are answering the questions about our economy, we are going to keep these 6 goals in mind. We want to make sure that our people have freedom, and that freedom is at the top of the priority list when we are making economic choices. We want people to have the freedom to be able to buy what they want, produce what they want, to be able to create a business if they want to. We want them to have the freedom to be able to do all that. We also want our economic system to work efficiently. So that's where sometimes we have to bring in some government involvement, where if one aspect of our economy is not working efficiently, the government may have to step in and put in regulation to make sure that it works more efficiently. So Equity also plays a factor in here when we are looking at who we're allowed to hire, what type of employees we have. We also have anti-monopoly rules in place in our government to make sure that businesses have fair trade, equal opportunities. Security is another aspect that we put on our priority list of economic goals, where we want people to feel secure in our economic system. And so as we are creating our budget, as we are creating our legislation, we're going to make sure that our laws make people feel like our economy is secure and then also stable. And then our last one here is that it is growing. And that's a hard one because nobody can truly predict the efficiency or the growth of an economy. It's kind of one of those things where we do our best to observe what's happened in the past, and we try to predict what's going to happen in the future. And we keep all these other goals in mind, attempting to create growth, but in a market economy or a capitalistic or even a democratic socialistic economy, you have to have people driven by incentive. So you can't always control those things by the government there. So the United States puts into place a number of principles that surround our free enterprise system. So we have freedom here to own private property and enter into contracts. What does that mean? What does it mean to have the ability to own private property and enter into contracts? Give me an idea for what that means. Okay.
Like own a building to run your business out of, and then you can buy and sell through your private property.
Okay. So I can negotiate certain prices for each of those things. So yes, we want to be able to have a building to be able to have my business, but I also want to be able to enter into a contract to be able to negotiate for better prices on the products that I am going to be using to create my product. So that's definitely something we want to have in our free enterprise system, freedom to make choices. So I have now secured a location for my donut shop. I have entered into a contract with my suppliers to provide the flour and the sugar and the chocolate that I need to make my donuts. Now I have the freedom to make choices, and I can decide what types of donuts I'm going to put on my menu. The government does not get to tell me exactly what I'm going to bake and what I'm going to sell in my donut shop. We also have the freedom to engage in economic competition. So I'm going to open up my donut shop knowing that there are 3 really good donut options nearby with Flour Mill, Mary Lou's, and Dunkin' Donuts. I have the freedom to start up a business, and I can set that business up next door to one of the other ones if I want to, and challenge them and say, well, if you want me to move, then you got to create a better donut so I go out of business. Or I might do the same. Economic competition. We have the freedom to make decisions based on our own self-interest. So this is where some companies get themselves into trouble. I mentioned a little bit ago, we have monopoly rules. And I remember, it's been about 20 years now, where, maybe even 25, excuse me, where Microsoft was involved in a lawsuit because they were considered to have a monopoly on the computer software business. And they went to court system, and basically what they had done is they had went around and they had bought up all the competitors. They had offered them a huge sum of money to sell them their product, and Microsoft took their product, took the best aspects of it, absorbed it into Windows, and then sold it as their own. And they did that all very legally. Well, it came around that, I think it was mid to late 1990s, that was about the only computer operating software you could buy is Windows. And so their prices went sky high. So if you wanted a computer at home and you wanted to be able to type a paper at home, you had to buy Microsoft Windows, and it was incredibly expensive. What's that? Yeah, I don't think a whole lot of people are familiar with that. I know I wasn't back during those times. And so you didn't have a whole lot of options. People claimed, well, they got a monopoly. Well, they were working based on their own self-interest, and Bill Gates continued to testify before these court hearings and say, we were doing what was best for our company. We saw these competitors. We offered them a legal contract to buy their product. They agreed. We took it. We now had the legal right to sell it as our own or to absorb it into our own. And the courts came around, and I believe that they ruled that they had to make some changes in their business practices, if I remember correctly. It was pretty controversial. So sometimes the government does come down on things like that, but for the most part, you have the opportunity to work on your own self-interest, even at the expense of somebody else's self-interest. And that's where the courts a lot of times will have to make that decision. Well, how does that work along with this next point, that you have the freedom to participate in the economy with limited government involvement or regulation? Well, as long as you follow the existing rules and you compete fairly, then you should be fine. Microsoft got themselves into trouble when some people didn't believe they were competing fairly. So I'm going to create my donut shop. I'm going to set it up right next to Mary Lou's. And we're going to have a competition for who's got the best donuts. And the government's not going to tell me how much to sell my donuts for or what type of donuts to make. So Mary Lou's, I don't even know the price on their donuts, but let's just, it's what? 60 cents a donut. Okay, we have an insider up here. Give me some good information. So if they're selling them for 60 cents a donut, I'm going to sell mine for 50. And I'm open right next door. I have a very, let's just say, compatible product as far as taste and selection goes. And if you see that my donuts are 50 cents and Mary Lou's are 60 cents, where are you most likely going to purchase them from? From me, because they're cheaper. So you come to me, and all the business that used to go to Mary Lou's is now walking in my door for 50 cents a donut. Now, she has the option. Mary Lou's could reduce their prices to 50 cents or maybe even 45, and we could have this back and forth. But let's just say they don't, and they run out of money, and now I have that entire street, no other donut shops there. I have driven Mary Lou's out of business. Now I take my 50-cent donuts. I can now spike them up to 75 cents. Businesses do this all the time. It's part of the free market. It's part of the free enterprise system. Some would claim it's maybe not ethical, but it's a common business practice. It's exactly what Amazon's trying to do right now, in case you're not paying attention to that. Amazon is striving to become the leader in home goods, leader in supplying all of the stuff that we would normally buy from Walmart or Target or a bookstore or somewhere else. And their goal is that after a certain number of years, people will become so accustomed to Amazon, Amazon Prime, quick delivery, that they'll stop shopping anywhere else. These other stores will close. We've already seen it with a lot of bookstores. I mean, when was the last time you went to a bookstore to buy a book? Yesterday. Okay, a few of you. To sing. Did you buy anything? Yeah, that's me too. I was there that night. My son played piano. I looked at several books and I said, I scanned my Amazon app. Yeah, it's cheaper on Amazon. And I didn't buy it from Amazon anyway. Okay, I didn't actually do that there, but I do it. I buy from Amazon because it's convenient. A lot of times it's cheaper. So Amazon's CEO said, I think it was last year, that if they can drive all the other companies out of business by, I can't remember what year he said, 2020 something, then they'll have a total monopoly on a lot of those items, especially books and movies and those type of things, where those stores won't exist anymore. You got to go to Amazon. Then they can charge you any price they want. Well, it's legal. I mean, we are making the choice as consumers to buy from Amazon as opposed to go to buying from Barnes & Noble. And so some of you who may not like that idea may start going to buying at the regular brick and mortar store. I see that as an example with Lifeway. You guys remember Lifeway Christian store, bookstore? Some of you, maybe none of you ever went there. Okay, it used to be over there. What? Yeah, owned by Shoe Carnival. So our family used to go to the Christian bookstore every Christmas. We get some Christmas money, and my wife's side of the family, they're big, they like to do a lot of reading. So we go to the Christian bookstore, and they'd spend a whole bunch of money there. Well, that no longer exists thanks to Amazon. So this Christmas, there was no Christian bookstore trip. And so everybody's now shopping at Amazon or Walmart or wherever they can find their stuff. It's just kind of a way that the economy is changing, and that's part of the freedom that we have to be involved without government interaction. Now, our government has 4 goals here to complete our national economic goals. And this here is the focus of almost every economy. Okay, so when we're talking about these 4 goals here, we could translate that to Canada, Mexico, France, England, almost every economy that would consider themselves to be a market-type economy. Goal number 1, let's have low unemployment. Why would that be important? Why do you think we want low unemployment?
Second, it can save from people from poverty, bring more jobs.
Okay, we want people to have more opportunities. We want them to be working. We want people to be involved in our economy, involved in our society. As you saw the circular flow model, if the people in the households are not spending money, or if they're not earning money, they're not spending money. And that money does not flow through the economy the way it should. So when we look at unemployment, we are talking about somebody that wants work but can't get it. This is not the person who could get a job and just decides to stay home. We're talking about the person who is actively pursuing a job and they cannot find work. Right now, unemployment rates in the United States are lower than they've been in years. So that is one indicator that we are accomplishing this goal in our economy currently in America today. It benefits society. So traditionally speaking, as we observe times in our economy when unemployment has been low, we have seen less poverty. You say, well, okay, obviously. People are working, there's going to be less poverty. That should be a no-brainer. But with less poverty also comes less crime. Now, there's a big connection that I care about because I care about keeping my family safe. So while I believe that I have some job security in what I'm doing, I'm not necessarily tracking the unemployment rate every single day because I have a secure job. For the person who does not have a secure job, they might be tracking that every day. And for me, I have a family with small children, and I know that when unemployment goes up and there's more people sitting at home without jobs, that also means that crime goes up. I'm going to start worrying a little bit more. Okay, does my neighbor have a job? Are people in my neighborhood employed, or are they struggling? And we all know that we have a sin nature, and that sin nature can drive us to do things we wouldn't normally do. Now, hopefully we're not living in terrible neighborhoods that are going to cause us to stress a lot about that, but it's something we need to think about. We also don't want to waste human labor. So we want to have full employment if possible, because the people who are unemployed, they're just sitting at home, and that is production that is missed out on as far as our national economy goes. We could be using that person to help us build something to help our economy grow stronger. So they're wasted labor. I think it's important to just touch on this for a moment here, that work is commanded for us in Scripture. And this is not a very popular message in our culture today, especially when you look at some of the financial advice that's out there. And I don't mean to come down real hard on anybody who may be looking at this as an option, but the person who is planning their career based on the fastest route to retirement just does not seem to have in my opinion, does not seem to have the right perspective on things. So I had a conversation with a few people who, they got into a career, and I said, hey, why'd you decide to do that? Well, because I could retire by the time I'm 42. I'm like, seriously? What are you going to do the rest of your life? I don't know. I just don't want to work. What? Play golf. Yeah. I like golf. Nothing wrong with golf as long as it's in the right perspective. But work is commanded for us. 2 Thessalonians 3:10 says, "For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if you would not work, neither should you eat." If you've taken U.S. history and you're familiar with John Smith, he also used this to help motivate the people when they were in their starving time in the early colonies. If you don't work, neither should you eat. Ephesians 4:28, "Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands a thing which is good, that they may have to give to him that needeth." And so we're commanded here to be working. God has given us work as something that we can do to honor him. And so let's not be lazy. Even when we do have jobs, let's not be lazy in our jobs. Let's make sure that we are working to glorify and honor him with everything we do. Let's look at goal number 2. We want stable price levels. So I took this photo back in 2000, when was that, 2011? 12, somewhere in that neighborhood. We were paying $4.07 per gallon for gas. That was ridiculous.
I think it's ridiculous when it gets to $3.
I know. Well, so I'll tell you a little bit about how old I am by the amount of money I've paid for gas. When I first started driving, gas prices were in the 150s. That was good. I was fine with that. I remember the day that it peaked. Excuse me, peaked over $2. It was about the time that my wife and I got married. We were heading on our honeymoon, and I remember that we were somewhere in North Carolina, and I found fuel for $1.99. And I remember thinking in my mind, this might be the last time in my lifetime I ever pay under $2 for gas. Because I knew how inflation worked, and that inflation is just part of a healthy, growing economy when it is done in small increments. Large amounts of inflation is not good. And this is what happened in 2012 or 13. I can't remember exactly when that was. We had major economic crisis. And all of a sudden, at the fuel pump, we saw prices go from $2 up to $3, up to $4. I can tell you there were a couple times I remember it jumped 78 cents in a single day. And I remember leaving school. We had a gas station right next to our school. We left school, and I remember thinking, man, I need to get gas. Well, in this particular intersection, it was not convenient to get into that gas station. You wanted to be going from the other direction because there was a divider, a median between the two. So I would have had to go down, turn around, come back around, get gas. I said, I'll get it tomorrow. 78 cents later, the next morning, I am paying almost $1 more per gallon to put into my tank. It's not a very happy camper. On the flip side, I've also seen it drop 50 cents in a single day. And it just roller coasters. And even here, I've seen it last summer, it would jump a little bit, especially over at Meijer. I would see that happen from time to time where it would jump 25 cents in a day. Now, that's not what we're not necessarily talking about inflation there. There are all kinds of other reasons why that happens in small increments there. But we want to have stable price levels. Healthy, small levels of inflation are good. The fact that your parents tell you, when I was a kid, or when your econ teacher tells you, when I was younger, this is what I used to pay for these prices. Okay, that's a good thing. All right, you should have some of those stories when you get older too. Like, all right, when I was younger and I was in high school, I used to pay this for that. That's good. That tells you the economy is growing. We want to have some inflation that points our economy in a positive direction, but it's a stable and steady growth. So as we make more money, we should expect that things will become more expensive. And that's just a natural part of a healthy economy. As we make more money in life, and as you get a pay raise at your job, that also means you should expect to pay more for the products that you buy. It's why you can no longer buy a cheeseburger for 50 cents at McDonald's like used to happen, or you can't buy a bottle of Coke for a quarter like you see some of the old commercials, because we've had some strong and stable inflation happen. But if we have inflation that happens in a quick moment or it jumps, that's where it can disrupt the economy and cause some uncertainty. And then it causes shortages or surplus of goods. So people have an expectation that prices are going to go up. They're going to go buy it all right now. Or if they expect that there's not going to be enough items out there, they're going to go buy it and take it off the shelves. And store owners are then going to charge more for that. And it causes problems in the entire circular flow. So we don't like to have shortages. We don't like to have surplus of goods because that messes with the prices of items and it affects our economic goal of stable price levels. What we'd like to see here is a healthy rate of economic growth. What we mean by a healthy rate of economic growth is that we have an increase in the goods and services that we can produce as a nation. So we'd really love to see our nation be able to produce more and produce it more effectively and at a lower cost. So if we can see that happening, then we know that we have a healthy rate of economic growth. There's two different types of economic growth. There's extensive growth, and there's intensive, and we'll deal with extensive here first. Extensive growth is where we're going to use more of our land, our labor, and our capital to increase our production. So I've got my donut shop, and I've constructed my first building on my piece of property. And I decide that I want to increase production. Well, my facilities won't handle any more donuts. So I'm going to build an addition. That is extensive growth because I'm adding some land to my existing property or to my existing building. Now I have another option. Instead of doing that, maybe that's too expensive. Maybe I'm going to hire more employees. And so I'm going to hire more labor, and I'm going to work around the clock. And my donut factory is now going to be open 24 hours a day. So I'm increasing production by increasing my labor. That's extensive growth. My capital growth would be an example where I might choose to buy an automated machine that takes all my dough and it slices my donuts, drops them in a fryer, and I'm not going to have as many employees, but this machine can continue working 24 hours a day as well. That's my capital. Capital can be in the machinery that I improve to be more efficient and more productive. All of those are examples of extensive growth. It allows me to produce more, but eventually the growth is going to slow. Not that I'm going to produce less, but where I went from last month making 10,000 donuts to this month I'm making 15,000 donuts, and next month I'm making 16,000 donuts, and the following month I'm making 16,000 donuts. Next month I'm still making 16,000 donuts. I've plateaued because I have again reached a limit on how much I can produce with land, labor, and capital. Okay? Let's compare that here with intensive growth. Intensive is where I'm going to use my existing factors of production. I'm not buying any new property. I'm not hiring any new employees. I'm not buying any new machinery. I'm going to walk into my donut shop. I'm going to have a team meeting, and I'm going to give the most inspirational, motivating speech I've ever given in any sort of situation, locker room, classroom. Man, everybody's just pumped, ready to go. They're ready to make donuts like they've never made them before. I have motivated you under the same conditions to now work better. So I'm going to find a way for those current factors of production to be more efficient. So I could offer certain benefits that I maybe didn't offer before. What happens here a lot of times with intensive growth is you can continue to see people improve. If I were to offer one of my employees an opportunity at management, and I said the most efficient worker, the person that makes the most donuts in the next month, you're going to have a shot at management. I'm going to see many people increase their efficiency. And if I offer that every month, I would continue to see growth. Or at least I would hope to see that. Goal number 4. And this is our last one today. We want a fair distribution of income. Fair distribution of income. So if you can't read that cartoon, if you're in the back, but the top square says, look, he's just given us all the money just like he promised. And the wife says, yeah, he has your wallet. In the bottom section, you've got the guy with the broken umbrella saying, I'm so excited. Jobs will soon be raining down like manna from heaven. And the guy with the umbrella full of money, I'm so excited. Tax cuts will soon be raining down like manna from heaven. A lot of this depends on what you define as fair. What is a fair distribution of income? And if you ask 10 different people, you're probably going to get 10 different answers. What does it mean to distribute our income fairly in our country? And so there's a whole lot of problems with defining what is fair. Does fair mean everybody has the same income? So you go out and you work whatever job it is that you have dreams of working, and you're going to come home and get the same paycheck as what Andrew Luck is getting? Is that fair? Sounds good to me. I like that idea. But what about the guy who he's working for an hour a day because he's too lazy and doesn't really want to go to work, and when he is there, he's not really doing a whole lot? Is it fair to pay him the same amount? Well, again, your definition of fair. You ever had that situation at your work where you are working alongside somebody else and your boss tells you guys, you two are both doing the same thing. You know he's getting paid the same amount as you are, and yet you're the one carrying the load. You're the one doing all the work. I worked landscaping for a summer. Yeah, college. And a couple of guys, they didn't want to work. They didn't have a good work ethic. They were out there, and I'm digging these trenches for these massive block walls we're doing. I'm out there digging trenches, and they're like, hey, I'm going to take a break. I'll be back in 5 minutes. I'm like, dude, we started 6 minutes ago. What's going on? Or, I'm sitting there digging, and they're like, hey, you want me to do anything? Yeah, grab a shovel. Oh, yeah, it's like all the way in the truck, like down the road. No, I'll wait till you're done. I'll use your shovel. Thanks. Appreciate it. I only worked there for one summer, by the way. But defining what's fair is hard. The question often comes to, do we define that as equal income? And it a lot of times depends on your life perspective, and it depends on your current situation in life. If you are on the low end of the economic totem pole, and somebody says equality of income, you're going, yeah, let's do it, because it means you're going to jump up. But if you're up here making this amount of money and somebody says equality of income, and you look at all the people down here making less money because they've not worked as hard or not had the certain advantages that you've had, you're going, no way. I don't want equality of income. What about safety nets? What about safety nets? First of all, we need to know, what is a safety net when we're talking about economy? What's the purpose of a safety net in life? What does it do? It catches you if you fall. You're at the circus, watching the guys in the trapeze doing these incredible things. If they are wise, they're going to have a net below them to catch them. I actually saw somebody fall from one of those once, not on purpose. And I think I was in the 3rd grade, and here this guy goes tumbling down, lands in the net. Safety net's there to catch you. So we're talking about economic benefits. When you have hard times in life, let's say you lose your job, or let's say that you have major medical expenses, should we have a safety net to help you out that is paid for by the government and the taxpayers? That's a key budget question that sometimes interferes with passing the federal budget. Some people would say, well, maybe a small one, but it should be limited. So we're going to have a safety net. So if you have a major medical expense, the government's going to kick in. They're going to help you out, but only for a month. And then you're going to be responsible on your own. Or if you lose your job, we'll help you out for a month, but after that, you're on your own. Other people would say, well, what if that person, they just can't find a job? Are we just going to make them lose their home, lose their car? And if they lose their car, they can't get to their next job interview. So now we have created more problems for them. It's not as simple as saying, well, I disagree with safety nets or I agree with them. There's a lot of things involved in that we have, again, like they said in the video, we can't always decide here in economics. But a lot of times the question comes down to this: should we just let the market determine your income? And in a free market economy, in a true capitalistic economy, that's how it works. Is that if you make wise financial decisions, and if you find a product that you can sell or find a job that you can make money, then that will determine your income. The government's not going to control all that. But I think when we look at all of these together, these questions don't have simple answers to them. But they're important for us to consider when we're looking at the goal of our nation is how do we determine what is a fair distribution of income? How do we make that good for everybody?